Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 1981 horror film, The Funhouse. Pay to get in, pray to get out. One of my all-time favorite taglines. I love that tagline. This is the Arrow video release. I don't have the Scream Factory release, but I did manage to get a hold of some of the features for it. So I did actually get to check those out. This is actually the better release, to be perfectly honest. It has more features. It has a really nice interview with Tobe Hooper that is nowhere to be found on the Scream Factory release. But anyway, let's get started with the review, shall we? The Funhouse is a 1981 horror film directed by Tobe Hooper. It is the follow-up to Salem's Lot in terms of his directorial efforts. So after Salem's Lot, he was kind of leery about doing a film so soon, but he got a hold of the screenplay and he really liked it. And the producers ended up convincing Tobe to do the movie, and he signed on to do the film. Now, the Funhouse was already optioned to be made into a movie long before it actually came out in theaters. The script by Larry Block had already basically been put together. Not really basically. It had been put together. The script had been put together, and they were going to start shooting, and things just didn't work out right away. So they were raising money and trying to pay Larry Block the money that he asked for. And at the same time, I think there was also... interestingly enough, there was a novelization of this movie that came out before the movie came out in theaters by Dinar Kunst, and he was going under a pseudonym at the time of Owen West. And so the film eventually got released in 81, and it started production in 1980, and it started production with a bigger budget. Because this is a film that originally was going to have a small budget, but then Universal came in and actually added a lot more money to the production. And I'm glad that that happened. I'm not saying the film would have been bad with a low budget, but with $3 million to work with, it really made the set, the Funhouse itself, so much more spectacular than it would have been if it did not have $3 million to work with in terms of the budget. Larry Block ended up getting paid a shit ton of money later on. I think there was something to do with the publishing sort of stuff with the novelization and things like that. And so he still got paid, but he got paid more for his work on the script than what he was paid for the movie. So he was paid less for what he did for the script than what having his name on the best-selling novel. So that was the main sort of thing that goes on with Larry Block. Now, Larry Block wrote the screenplay, and it is a really great script. There's some really wonderful, funny lines of dialogue. I like that it pulls back the curtain and shows you what's going on behind the carnival, behind the sideshow. You see stuff with the fortune teller character, Madame Zena, who is putting on a show as your typical cliched fortune teller lady, and then she breaks character in a really fun scene where she's just pissed off at Amy, Buzz, and Richie and Liz, who are all stoned off their asses, just completely making a total farce out of her fortune-telling show. And she then just tears into them, and it's a great quote here. She's like, "Don't come back or I'll break every bone in your fucking bodies. Beat it." It's just great to see a different side of the sideshow, different side of the fortune teller lady. Also, you saw her later, actually earlier in the film, essentially beating off the funhouse, the funhouse monster, the creature. And there's other really fun lines of dialogue between Richie and Liz, Richie's talking. He's like, Amy will hit it off for sure. Buzz is a terrific guy. She's stoned. When you're stoned, Charles Manson is a terrific guy. So, and there's another one I like here. Buzz is talking to Richie, and Richie called him an asshole, and he's like, hey, watch who you're calling an asshole, asshole. So there's some fun lines of dialogue, and the script also does a great job with its characters. Now, there might not be that much character development for Cooper Huckabee's character, Buzz, or Largo Woodruff's character of Liz, or Miles Chapin as Richie, or even Kevin Conway as the Freak Show Barker, as well as the Strip Show Barker and the Funhouse Barker, because he played all three Barkers in the film, because it was a part of his stipulation in his contract. Or even the monster, played by Wayne Doba, who apparently has a name, and it's Gumfer Twibbunt. And I'm glad you didn't really hear him called that throughout the movie, because that would be pretty silly. But like a lot of strong scripts from this particular time period, the characterization is really strong because of the personality and the charisma that is added to these characters. These are all likable characters. So when they get killed off, it's such a effective horror movie, and the suspense is more suspenseful because you have these characters who you like, and yeah, they're not perfect. But they do stuff that a lot of teenagers would do. Hey, let's spend the night at the Funhouse. A friend of mine did it, and they had a blast. And so they do that, and it turns into a night of terror. And there's only one left alive by the end of the movie. So most of the character development, if you're looking for traditional character development, is for Elizabeth Berridge's character, Amy. And rightfully so. She's the main character of the film, and she really does the actress does a great job bringing this character to life, as well as all the other actors in the cast. It's a very strong cast. Cooper Huckabee did a good job as Buzz. Largo Woodruff was gorgeous and funny as Liz. Miles Chapin was fun as a comic relief. Richie, Kevin Conway was brilliant as all three of the Barkers, especially Conrad Straker. The way he delivered the lines when he's talking about, do you dare enter the Funhouse, was just really good. Was fantastic, spectacular. And Wayne Doba, who played the monster under all of this makeup, which was worked on by a really absolutely I'm trying to think of it's a splendid tag team of makeup effects artist Craig Reardon and Rick Baker, who worked on the monster. And he's underneath all this makeup, and he's essentially blind because he can't see anything, and he was a street performer, and he took on the role of this monster and really delivered one of the most impressive performances I've seen with an actor in all of this makeup who's completely blind as a bat and really has to act with his movements and not much else. The film also features an absolutely stupendous score by John Beal, one of the best musical scores I've ever heard in a horror film, and it is definitely one of those scores that deserves its high acclaim. This is a very highly acclaimed score, and for a good reason. It is a fantastic score. I love the use of the orchestra. Originally, the producers were trying to get him to do something with digital music, synthesizers and stuff like that, but John was like, no, John was thinking about doing that himself, but then the producer wanted something. One of the producers actually was Mark L. Lester, who would go on to direct a handful of movies, I believe. Mark L. Lester's done a decent amount of films. I think he's the director of Commando. Yeah, he directed Commando. He did Firestarter, Class of 1999, Class of 1984, I believe, Showdown Little Tokyo. So he produced the film, and well, he was one of the producers, because there was a ton of producers. There was Stephen Bernhardt, there was Derek Power, there was Mace Newfield, who apparently was one of John Beal's idols. Like, he really liked Mace Newfield and was looking forward to work with him. And Mace was one of the guys who really campaigned for an orchestral score, because he felt that fit the film and its tone a lot more than a synthesizer score. And he was absolutely right in the money. The orchestral score really did fit this film perfectly, and it added so much mood and atmosphere that would not be there without it. And one of my favorite things about this movie is hands down the score by John Beal. And John Beal himself still says he still gets fan mail from fans who love his score, and whenever he talks about his scores and the music that he's done for films, a lot of people, when he mentions the Funhouse, are like, "Oh yeah, the Funhouse, man, I love that score," and for good reason. It is arguably his finest hour, or hours, when it comes to his repertoire. It also features some really lush, great cinematography by Andrew Laszlo. This is the same cinematographer who worked on The Warriors, and he really does an amazing job really bringing the Funhouse to life in a way that just makes the film look like a much bigger budgeted movie than a $3 million production. I just love the way he shoots the Funhouse, and I love the production and art design of the Funhouse itself. They built the set on what I believe was like the old sets for Flipper and the TV show Flipper and things like that over in Florida. And they built this set, they built the Funhouse, they built a whole carnival and everything. And the Funhouse set actually worked. Like, you could actually get into the carts and they'd go around a track, and this is the kind of stuff I miss so much. I miss this practical, physical setting immensely, and it's something that's missing from so many movies nowadays, because they just choose to do things behind a green screen more often than not, and it really kills the illusion. It ruins the illusion. It takes you out of the film, and for me personally, that's a mistake. I don't feel that a film should take you out of it. I don't think you should be watching a movie and then realize that you're watching a movie, that it's a movie and it's not some form of augmented reality. But that's a whole nother story entirely. I could go off on that for a while, and I'm not going to do that. But anyway, yeah, I love the cinematography by Andrew Laszlo, as well as, of course, the production and art design. The film also features some really great editing by Jack Hofstra. And for a film that is kind of a slow burn, once it picks up, it really has a great pace to it, and it culminates in a really great climax. And I keep using the word great because it's really a great way to describe the film. I mean, fantastic is another word I've been using a lot, and that also describes the film really well, too. It's a fantastic movie. It's a fantastic film. The Funhouse is a fantastic horror film. It's creepy. It's got some great scares. Hooper's direction is really top-notch, top of the line. I heard a rumor that he might have been fired before the film was finished, and that's really too bad if that's the case. But the majority of the film apparently was still directed by Hooper, and it shows. This is definitely one of his finest works, and one of my favorite films that he's done. I wouldn't say it's my favorite Tobe Hooper movie, but it's definitely up there. It's in my top 5 for sure. And I love how Hooper himself added to the production design. He is the reason why you have all these creepy automatons that are sprinkled throughout the funhouse, and even on top of the funhouse. Like when you go to the funhouse, there's this fat lady that's greeting you, and it just really added to the eerie atmosphere of the movie and of the funhouse setting itself. And apparently the opening, which I love, I absolutely adore this opening sequence, this cop-out opening scene where it looks like it's just a typical opening for another typical slasher movie, but really what it is, it's a fake out, and one of the best that I've seen. That was actually added after the fact. It was added because the producers didn't like the way that the audiences reacted after a test screening. They felt that the film was too slow paced, so they shot that scene last minute, and you would have never have known that because it looks great. It really does look fantastic. So I don't really know what else to say about the Funhouse. I mean, it's a pretty short review, I know that. I didn't really want to go in depth on the plot and things like that, because it's a very straightforward plot. You have these group of high schoolers who go to the carnival late one night. They decide to spend the night in the funhouse, and they run afoul of the carnival barker, played by Conway. So you have, I believe, Conrad. They run afoul of Conrad, played by Kevin Conway. And this is another... He does a really wonderful job as the Funhouse Barker, like I've said earlier. And this is definitely one of his best performances. And he even feels that it's one of his favorite roles. Oh, and speaking of actors, I wanted to mention William Finley real quick, who had a fun cameo as a magician named Marco the Magnificent. And he was also in Eaten Alive and, of course, Phantom of the Paradise. So they run afoul of Conrad Straker and his deformed mutant son, played by Wayne Doba, and things just the shit starts hitting the fan. People start getting taken out one by one, and it culminates in Amy facing off with the monster alone. And that's the Funhouse. It's a straightforward, simple plot, but that's really all that it needs to be. It doesn't need to be overly complicated, because the draw is in the Funhouse itself, and of course the monster, which is a really fantastic practical makeup effect. I can't praise it enough. The design is stellar. Now, before I kind of give my sort of final thoughts on the film, I wanted to sort of talk about its reputation as a video nasty, which really baffles me. This film is on the video nasties list, the list of films that were banned by the BBFC, I believe, in the early 80s. And I have no idea why. This is not a very bloody movie. It's not very gory. So its inclusion on that list makes no sense. But that just shows you the craziness of that whole video nasties thing. It was never really about how violent something was. Well, it kind of was, but really it was just one of those things where these hoity-toity stuck-up British government people decided certain movies were offensive and should not be shown to the public, and the Funhouse ended up falling under their steamroller. That's really what happened. But it is a very puzzling bit of trivia when it comes to the Funhouse. But I guess one more thing I could talk about is this Blu-ray. It has a nice transfer of the film. This is a early era release. This is like one of the earlier ones. This is from 2011. It features a lot of special features. There's a lot of special features on this. There's an audio commentary with one of the producers. There's an audio commentary with Craig Reardon and Jeffrey Reddick, the creator of the Final Destination films. You have another audio commentary with Justin Kurzweil, and you have a really nice interview with Tobe Hooper. Another interview with Tobe Hooper. Like, there's there's like a couple interviews with Tobe Hooper on this. There's also Q&A with Tobe Hooper. There's a really interesting, fun interview with Craig Reardon on this, where he also talks about Poltergeist, and he mentions some stuff that really kind of makes the whole Spielberg directed it, and Tobe Hooper didn't do that much, kind of up in the air. And he was on the set a lot too. So that was really nice to hear from Craig Reardon, not just on Poltergeist, but also his fun stories about working on this movie, The Funhouse, as well as Eaten Alive, which apparently he didn't do that much on at all, except put some makeup on one of the chick's breasts. Because there was this guy who was doing makeup for the whole production, who's an asshole, who just basically took over, and Craig Reardon was just a assistant. He didn't do that much at all. And then there was another interview with Mick Garris, who talks about Tobe Hooper and his collaborations with him. And there's a booklet and things like that, and reversible cover art. So there's a booklet here, and this is what the disc looks like. It's not region free. It's region B, so if you don't have a region free player, you can't really play this. But if you do, I recommend this a lot. This is a great Blu-ray. Arrow Video does it again. This shows that they were on top of their game even early on when they were releasing films on Blu-ray. Like when they first started, they were still on top of their game. And I think this is a better release than the Scream Factory release. I really do. There's more features. There's more to it. The Scream Factory release, I saw the features. They're okay. There's this short interview with Kevin Conway. There's another short 3-minute sort of excerpt with William Finley from another interview that he did about his cameo in the film. There's a nice interview with John Beal on his score and the impact that it's had on his career and the legacy of the score for the Funhouse. And there was, I believe, another interview. There was an interview with Miles Chapin, but there's also another. No, I don't think that's on there. There's an interview with Miles Chapin on this. There's an interview with Sidney J. Furie. Not Sidney J. Furie, Mark L. Lester. There's an interview with Mark L. Lester who talks about producing the film and things like that. But yeah, there's definitely more. There's more features and more juicy bits on this release. But anyway, I don't really know what else to say, except I liked the Funhouse. I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was a great film, and I will definitely watch it again. And I would say if you haven't seen the movie, check it out sometime. It's a slow burn type of movie. It's not really that bloody. When it comes to things that I would have liked maybe to see more of, I know it's not really supposed to be a bloody film, but I have to admit I would have liked to have seen some more creative kills. That would be nice. And even though you have the really brilliant cop-out opening, it still has some moments where it slows down a bit too much, and it would have been nice to have tightened up a little bit more pacing, or had some more action or intrigue put in there. But other than that, I don't really have any other issues with the movie. The cast all do their jobs really well. The direction by Hooper is great. The screenplay is well written by Larry Block, and overall it's a fine example of 80s horror done right. So anyway, thank you for watching my review of the Funhouse, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.